What's up, everybody? Matt with One Team, One Podcast back. It's been a minute. Been a minute. Um, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can see background's a little different. Moved into a house. Um, Life's been, it's been good. Everything's been great. Just haven't had a whole lot of time. Haven't had a whole lot of time for a podcast. Still moving in a little bit too, so this room is not completely ready yet. But wanted to come on, talk about a few things tonight. Not going to be a long episode again. Just me, your boy, in here. But LSU baseball season, obviously, ramping into postseason play, and got me thinking about a few things. And one of the things that we're probably going to be morphing into here at the podcast is going to be more of a look back at LSU history. And not like ancient history or anything like that, but my lifetime, and I'm in my 40s, so 90s baseball huge for me. Obviously 2000s too as well, but even the 80s, like I love talking to Ben McDonald about 80s late 1980s baseball, LSU baseball. So we're going to talk a little bit about that going forward. We'll probably revisit some old LSU football games and get some guests on as we go along. Once I get this thing kind of back up and running. If you follow me on social media, I'm still all over social media. You can check me out on all the platforms. But we'll start doing the audio podcasts. We'll start ramping those back up. I'm going to be doing video podcasts on YouTube. We'll upload those on YouTube, but probably no live shows right now. Just kind of like getting my feet back under me and kind of switching gears a little bit. I'm enjoying talking about past LSU and how it kind of relates to now. So we might keep doing that. So keep following for more episodes. And if you follow me on social media, please let me know if there's anything you guys are interested in talking about. Maybe some old teams that kind of come to mind. But for today's episode, actually, one of the things I wanted to talk about was the SEC tournament. LSU's going into the SEC tournament. Maybe some memories that I have of SEC tournament play for LSU baseball before the regionals. Maybe some of those teams as they were getting hot going into the regionals. Obviously, this is a weird year this year. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well. Before I get started, I want to shout out to a lot of our sponsors. Bank of England Mortgage, still with me. Patrick Michelson, good friend of mine. Call Patrick over at Bank of England Mortgage. It's boesouthernstates.com, 225-810-1805. They're our audio sponsor for all of our podcasts. He can help you with any mortgage refi needs. Go to the website. You can actually apply right there. So Patrick's a great guy, good friend of mine. Also, Lucas Ragusa at River Cities Total Maintenance in the New Orleans Harahan area. So NOLA-AC.com. That's 504-841-3300. River Cities Total Maintenance. You can handle AC. You're going to need that right now. It's getting up to saw this weekend. That could be like 95. That's fucking hot. So call Lucas, get it all checked out for you. Fred's in Tigerland. I saw a name not too long ago, actually, at a golf tournament. So check out Fred's at Tigerland. Best screwdrivers in town, no doubt. Give your boy Naya a holler. Let him know the podcast sent you. Bocock Brothers Cigars, still giving me good cigars. You can find them at Churchill's, Havana Port, and Cigar Den in Prairieville. You can find them at a couple of places in Baton Rouge. So, or you can go to their website. That's bocockbrothers.com. You can get boxes. You can get they have some golf gear on there too, so really sweet stuff. So give them a call. Also, I'm starting up a new little venture here. So I do advertising as well, but like starting off, it's called OTOP Design. We'll play on OTOP, logo design, video editing, and social media management. You can reach me at OneTop Design BR at gmail.com. So give me a holler. Anybody's got any small business needs, also big businesses for social media. Finding a lot of people aren't doing a lot of social media and don't really know how to start. So give me a call. I kind of do that for a living. So check me out. And with that, let's get started. I wanted to talk about a couple of things with LSU baseball. So we're going into SEC tournament play. A little disappointing last weekend, obviously, because we had a chance to win the SEC. And it got me thinking, we were 19, what was it? 19-10 was our final SEC record. And it's usually one of the calling cards of a really good team is get to the 20 win mark in the SEC, which we would have been tied for first, or tied for the best record with 20 wins, but we would have won the SEC because we'll only have 9 losses. So because of that South Carolina game, but 20 win mark is usually where you want to be. So just fell just short of that. And obviously this is the team that's completely loaded this year. You just saw today, Dylan Cruz is SEC Player of the Year. Paul Skeens is the SEC Pitcher of the Year. You got Tommy White on the first team, lineup. You got a couple of freshman All-American. Freshman All-SECs. They're going to be freshman All-American also. But, you're loaded this year. So a lot of people were disappointed in this town. So there's actually a lot of negativity around this team right now, even with their record the way it is, which is kind of astonishing. And if you take a look back, kind of relating to the SEC tournament, one of my favorite SEC tournament memories was the 2008 LSU baseball team. And I don't know if you guys are familiar, but Paul Maneri took over in 2007. We had a down year because it was his first year. Got a huge recruiting class came in. You had Blake Dean was on the team. Lewis Coleman, Anthony Renato were all pitching. Ryan Verdugo was like one of our best pitchers that year. But they started slow, and they were actually picked 5th in the West. So they were picked 5th out of 6 teams at that time. We only had 6, but started. If I remember the record, I believe we were 16-13. I believe that's right. 16-13 was our record at one point in the season. So it was actually dire. Like it looked like we were kind of on the ropes as far as even making a regional. I think that was kind of what we were predicted at anyway. But no, I'm sorry, 23-16-1. 23-16-1. Hey, can you imagine if we were 23-16-1 this year? I mean, people would be freaking out. They're already freaking out. Every loss, freak out. So 23-16-1. They then get hot. That was around the end of April. They get swept by, lose 2 games to Georgia, one tie to Georgia. Georgia was pretty good that year. And then they kind of go on a huge heater, sweep South Carolina, sweep Kentucky, sweep Mississippi State, sweep Auburn to get into the SEC tournament. They go in the SEC tournament. They're losing 4-0 to South Carolina. Come back and win 5-4. Beat Vanderbilt, who was one of the best teams in the country that year. Beat Alabama, and then beat Ole Miss to win the SEC tournament. So won 4 games straight in that season. Sorry. They go into the regionals, sweep the regionals. And if you remember, that was the year they go to the Supers, and they host at LSU. It's UC Irvine comes in, beats us in the first game, beating us in the second game. Looks like our season's about to be over. We come back, huge comeback. We win that game, and then we actually blow them out in the last game. But that year we won. We were 23-16 up until that UC Irvine game. We won 23 games in a row. Huge winning streak. And that SEC tournament was part of that run that we had, which was an incredible run. You knew your luck was going to run out eventually, and it did in the College World Series. We won 1 out of 3. So lost to UNC, beat Rice, and that was a comeback. Blake Dean had a big triple that game to win the game, and then lost to UNC again. So North Carolina had a really good team that year. But that run was so magical. And I remember listening to some of it on the radio because I was at the beach, and usually every Memorial week I usually end up in Florida, and that's right when the SEC tournament's playing. And I remember listening to the game where we came back, and I think we beat South Carolina, and then a few games later, we beat Ole Miss, kind of similar fashion. They were beating us early, and we come back and win. It was just kind of like magical. I remember that very vividly, just listening to it. We don't do that a lot anymore, right? Like we don't listen to a lot of radio anymore. Listen to games. Sorry, Chris Blair, if you're listening, but I always remember that time in my head because we were so good for so long at LSU baseball. Smoke Laval comes in, just everything kind of just starts going downwards a little bit. Pulmonary comes in, revitalizes things that year, and I remember there was so much, kind of like how there's negativity right now around the program. At that time, there was just so much like enthusiasm, like oh my god, we're back, and it was kind of the opposite of what it is now, which is crazy too. And obviously, that was in 2008. The next year, we end up winning it all. And it's like the magic was back to steal Jared and our line. So that's one of the first memories that I have, just off the top of the SEC tournament. I remember listening to it, which is crazy. We just don't do that anymore. But one of the other memories, obviously, has got to be a few years ago with Todd Peterson. Todd Peterson coming in, telling Maneri that he's hit before because they didn't want to take him out of the game, so he hits, and hits a double off the wall. Just goes up there acting like he's done this a million times. That's an obvious memory of mine for the SEC tournament is him just coming out of nowhere with that. And he was dominant on the mound. If you remember that, the end of that year, he was coming off in relief, and he had been up and down pretty much his entire career with like starting and relieving. And would you consider him a little early in his career, maybe a little Blake Money-ish, something like that, giving up some homers, and every now and then he'd come off with a good performance. Not Blake really hadn't done that this year too much, but similar kind of in the fold of that. But then that last year, he just kind of came on at the end, But yeah, I think everybody's going to remember that hit and how awesome that was, in his interview after the game, things like that. It's a definite memory of mine. And then I just remember some old Skip Bertman teams that really didn't care too much about being in the SEC tournament. They really didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. It's like they didn't want to waste too many guys. They wanted to get ready for the regionals, and I'm very interested to see how LSU plays that this year. Jay Johnson's got a team that's obviously already a national seed. So how are we going to play Skeens with this? Skeens, I mean, we start Wednesday early in the morning. I would assume he's not going to pitch that game. I would assume he's going to pitch the next game, either in the winners bracket or the losers. But don't know who you would pitch on Wednesday. So I don't know how they're going to play this out. And maybe it means, like, do you win the first game, you have a different attitude, or if you lose the first game, you have a different attitude as far as how you want to go. But obviously you're going to be hosting a regional, and you win that, I think you're obviously hosting a super. So how important are we going to, what kind of emphasis are we going to put on this tournament? Another thing I wanted to look at for this this coming tournament is LSU in postseason. Okay, so LSU's in the postseason now. And I've seen this out of LSU teams in the past, and I know this is a different coach and different team and all that, but like, seems like guys end up rising to the level of the situation. So you're not going to be playing nickels midweek anymore. You may play them in the regional, but you're not going to be playing these midweek games where it's just very lackadaisical focus. You're not playing Georgia, who has nothing on the line, and you're just kind of like, I mean, obviously we had something to play for because we could have won the SEC, but it's not like, okay, it is if you win, you're in, you lose, you're out kind of mode. The SEC tournament's the first kind of gauge of that to me. Does somebody step up? Does somebody step up right now, like in the pitching staff? Does Cruz snap out of it all of a sudden? This is a guy who was batting almost 500. He still wins Player of the Year because he's the Player of the Year, but he's in an obvious hitting slump. I heard the best stat I heard about that whole thing, that whole situation with his hitting slump was, I think he was at 500 at the time, and like if he were to go 0 for 60 in his next 60 at bats, he would have still be batting over 300, which is nuts, just crazy. So a couple of things that I want to see with LSU baseball, and that I think that's we're in a different situation now. We're in the SEC tournament, it's tournament play. Do light bulbs come off? And the way I'm talking, like you're talking like this is a bad team. It's not a bad team. This is a great team. It's a great team. They just need a little oomph to get them to the next level. So I want to see how they react to that. I think that could be big for them to have a couple of arms come out of nowhere. I heard Charlie Hannegriff. He's a great guy. I'll probably have Charles Hannegriff on some other podcasts if he'll come on of mine to talk about older LSU seasons and players and things like that. But I remember him talking. He was talking today about Joey Painich. Just came out of nowhere one year. Just literally came out of nowhere. He was a good arm, but he wasn't like he was throwing like darts at the end of the year. And it was just that we don't have a guy like that. Like, who's going to be that guy for us? Is it a Blake Money? I think we saw Thatcher Hurd come out of nowhere, not nowhere, but like Thatcher Hurd came back. I felt like he had a really strong performance. Ty Floyd's pitching well. So I want to see if there's another guy that can kind of come in and help us out. Javen Coleman looks okay. Like the more the merrier at this point, right? Like first of all, we need a closer. Somebody's going to come in and just stop the bleeding. Just give us a couple outs. It's almost like a defensive stop in basketball. We just need some stops. Get us some stops. Let our offense come back on the field. Get some more runs. So very interested in the SEC tournament. It'd be a lot of fun. I love watching even daytime baseball. I'll be at work, but I'll be streaming it, obviously, watching it all. Cageonomics on YouTube, by the way. He gets kicked off every now and then, but he'll come right back. All right, so another talking point today with Dylan Cruz winning the SEC Player of the Year. Is he the greatest LSU baseball player of all time? And I felt like that was a topic right up my alley, right? Like, I love it. I love making lists, love talking about, historical or, who's the greatest of, LSU in whatever category, whatever position, blah, 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 blah. So kind of made not a list. It's just a group of names. So don't look at this as like any order or anything like that. Although there was a few at the top that were probably close to it. And I'll just show you here. So we got, and like I said, not in any order: Dylan Cruz, Todd Walker, Alex Bregman, Ben McDonald, Paul Skeens, Eddie Furness, Lyle Mouton, Albert Bell, Mikey Matuk, Aaron Nola, Gosman, Lewis Coleman, Brandon Larson, Russ Johnson, Brad Cressy, Ray Frimes, Aaron Hill. Shit ton of guys. DJ LeMahieu, Gary Email, Mike Soraka. So I even threw in fucking Ryan Terrio on there. So if I'm putting his name on there. So a lot of guys. And just looking at this, to me, obviously the ones that probably stick out to me is Dylan Cruz, Todd Walker, Alex Bregman, Ben McDonald, probably Eddie Furness, Aaron Nola. And it's hard to say who's the greatest baseball player of all time for LSU because pitchers, are we counting pitch? This is the old adage: is a pitcher as valuable as a everyday player? I think for a guy like Ben McDonald, yes, he was that valuable back then for that team. I think Paul Skeens is pretty fucking valuable. I think you would agree with that. But I mean, say we're taking pitchers out, so we're gonna scratch Ben McDonald, scratch Aaron Nola, Ryan Gosman, Cruz, Walker, Bregman, Eddie Furness, Lyle Mouton, Albert Bell, Mikey Matuk. I don't see anybody close to Dylan Cruz and Todd Walker. To me, those would be the top two LSU baseball players of all time. And the stats just back me up on this. I know it's very much, current and top of mind, but Dylan Cruz's stats is just, I haven't even looked at his career stats now with this year, but I know it's heavy, Todd Walker was the greatest LSU baseball player of all time. And I think Dylan Cruz has passed him up. And that's no slight on Todd Walker. That's just how good Dylan Cruz is. He's batting 430. Todd Walker's best year, I think it was 400. I think that was his sophomore year. I think freshman year he batted like 390, sophomore year 400, and then junior year like 390 again. So he was never like consistently over the 400 mark. He had a lot of power, he had a lot of doubles. And I think Cruz is just different. He's like a guy. He's an alien. He should have never been on the baseball field at LSU. Should have probably been pros. Alex Bregman was similar. I didn't feel like Alex Bregman ever belonged at LSU. I think we were lucky to have him. But Alex Bregman never hit for the average that, guys like Dylan Cruz and Todd Walker did. He had some power, but like he showed it a little later in his career. I think defensively, Alex Bregman was the best shortstop to ever come out of LSU. Not even close. So I think there's a little bit of give and take there. Dylan Cruz is a great center fielder still too. So as far as positions go, I'd have to say Dylan Cruz is your number one LSU baseball player of all time. And guys, talking about Eddie Furness, you're talking about Albert Bell, Mikey Matuk, Brandon Larson hit 40 fucking home runs in a year. Brad Cressy, huge home run leaders here. There's a lot of guys on this list that he's better than, which is nuts to put it in perspective. So I found that conversation very interesting today. Definitely wanted to touch on that. And I think I don't think there's anything controversial about that. About that him being the best player of all time. And I feel like I consider myself an LSU historian as far as like, older LSU baseball, football, basketball, things like that, to kind of put it in perspective a little bit. And I think a guy like Ben McDonald would probably tell you the same thing. I'd love to have him on again. So check it out. Maybe I'll get Big Ben on, especially for regionals and supers if he's available. We can kind of talk about that. I think next week I would like to talk about regionals. I have a lot of regional stories from when I was growing up at the old box. And back then, obviously, it was a 6-team, 48 teams, 6-team regional fields. And so you had 8 6-team regionals, and then the winners go to Omaha. So there was no supers back then or whatever. But I have a few stories about that. One of them involves Rick Green. It was in '92. We got eliminated. It was at Alex Box, but I'll talk about that next week. I think that'll be fun to kind of go over that. Maybe we can get Rick on the podcast. That'd be great. Um, so anyway, guys, short episode tonight. Just wanted to touch on a few topics. Wanted to kind of give you the new layout for One Team One Podcast. So check us out. Still, we're always going to be at Spotify and Apple, and then you can check us out on YouTube, obviously. And go on our social media pages. So we have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, One Team One Pod, and then also TikTok. So we do some TikTok videos still. So check us out there. We appreciate all of our sponsors again. We have Bank of England Mortgage, Patrick Michelson. Big shout out to him. BOESouthernstates.com. You can do your mortgage and refis straight on their website. And Lucas Ragusa over at River Cities Total Maintenance. We appreciate Lucas for all he does for us, Freds in Tigerland. We appreciate those guys. Bocock Brothers Cigars. It's BocockBrothers.com, hashtag be cocky. And my newest little venture, OTOP Designs, the logo designs, video editing, and social media management. I already have a few clients. So hit me up, ontopdesignbr@gmail.com. And with that, guys, I will be seeing you guys next week. Again, shoot me a message on one of the social media platforms. Let me know if there's anything that you're interested in talking about for next week. Any stories that you have to tell or want to hear about. Maybe if there's a guest idea, let me know. And I'm open for it. And I'm gonna have a lot of fun with this, guys. I think that's the biggest key is just have some fun. Let's talk about some older LSU history, how it relates to the present. I think that's a really good little niche here. So hit me up, guys. I appreciate everybody for listening again. It's been One Team One Podcast. Logan out.